Welcome, everyone, to the Beyond Dentistry podcast. I'm here today with Dr. Ivan Cicchon, who is also known as Implant Ninja. Welcome to the podcast.
Hey, what's up, Dan? Thanks for inviting me.
Of course, of course. So I'm really excited to have Ivan on the podcast today because he's doing something that, I'm doing in a different aspect, which is, teaching fellow people of the profession how to kind of navigate their way through whatever their aspirations are, whether it is getting into dental school or placing implants and restoring. So I've been following Ivan for a while now, and just by watching his videos, it made me want to reach out to him and interview him because he makes it fun, interesting, non-intimidating. So I think that, especially with implant dentistry, everything's pretty endless. So thank you again for that. Um, so we're going to start off just with a quick background, kind of who you are, where you went to school, what residency you did, if any, and how you
Sure,
are where
sure.
you are
So
today.
first question, who I am? That's like such a deep question. I don't know. That's a hard one. Well, I mean, shoot. Okay, so I'm a prosthodontist, I guess. Prosthodontist out here on the West Coast. I bounce back and forth between California and Washington. Um, I originally immigrated from Peru with my family when I was 2 years old, and my parents both, they did the whole immigrant hustle, right? They were trying to figure out how to make it here, and they were dentists back in Peru, and they were able to, after many years, get their licenses here. And so they got their licenses here, and once they did, my life kind of changed a bit, right? We were able to, buy a house. They put us through school, and yeah, I guess things were good. And I decided to follow my parents' footsteps. So that's how I landed in dentistry. But once in dental school, I found out I really didn't like it. To be honest, I didn't like what I was doing in school. I was so deep in biochem and perio charting and all this stuff that seemed like, why the hell am I doing this? So but luckily I lasered in on implants because that's what sort of seemed fun to me. So I decided, if I'm gonna do dentistry, well, I'm already in dental school, I can't drop out now, my wife said. So I decided to go double down on implants, and so I went to a prostho residency in Michigan, and yeah, that's sort of how I got into it.
That's great. So at what age did your parents come here? And then how was that transition for them?
I mean, it was nuts, right? They came here in 1990 because in South America, in Peru, where I'm originally from, there was a lot of terrorism, or like they have basically socialist groups. There's like socialist groups down in South America that they caused a bunch of problems for people, and they were doing bombings and all this stuff. So they basically said, let's get the hell out of here because we need to go to a safer place, and the States was a place to go. So how old were they? You asked. I mean, I was 3. I think they were. They must have been like 22. Um,
Gotcha.
and so they did a bunch of odd jobs and like construction and like stacking newspapers and housekeeping, and I would tag along with them for all that stuff.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's always, I find that if you're resilient like that, like what it takes to put in the work and to see outcomes is amazing. And just your upbringing here and having that, I've also, my mom's an immigrant, so she also came here at a very young age. And she went through this whole thing with her father, who they did something different where he came here originally to start a business. So he started like a convenience store in Brooklyn, built it up to the point where he now is allowing my mom and her sister and his wife to come to America so that they have a life. And then, the investments that they made in Brooklyn back then, obviously has become great today. And I think what my mom instilled in me, which probably similar to how your parents instilled in you, is like the hard work. Nothing is given to you, unfortunately, these days. You kind of have to fight for what you want.
It's really tough. you know what's it is a blessing to grow up that way. It also is a challenge because I don't know if you felt this way. Let me know if you have. As you're growing up, you're like, okay, I have to work at least as hard as these people, and they're
Right.
telling me I have to succeed more than them. So it's like, shit. Okay, now how do I one up my parents because they're telling me, hey, I'm giving you a good life, son. You didn't have to do all this. Now, what are you going to do with
Exactly.
your life? So that's it's been a persistent challenge in life, you know.
Yeah, but it's all built up. Like you were told that when you were 3 years old, up until now. Like
Yeah.
that's just what you are now, and you've become that. So, all right, let's move on to Implant Ninja. And so you are in Prosto residency. You went because you knew you liked implants. Did you like working with your hands when you were little, like building things,
Oh yeah,
parts,
that's
things
me.
like
Yeah,
that?
yeah. I'm
Yeah.
an artist. I like making things. So yeah.
So, you went there and you fell in love. So tell me how Implant Ninja started and when.
So I'm just gonna backtrack a little bit. In dental school, I wanted to drop out. Right, didn't happen because my fiance was like, get your act together, I'm gonna whoop your ass."
As she should.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And we moved to Michigan because I was like, no, I got it figured out. I'm gonna do prosthodontics. I'm gonna do implants, and I'm gonna kill it. Don't worry about it. And so we went to Michigan, and in Michigan, I was expecting something amazing. Um, and it was a good program. And anybody that goes to any kind of program after dental school will know like there's good and bad for sure. But I was expecting like, hey, I'm going to be spoon fed all of this information and it's just going to be amazing. I'm going to come out like a total badass. But that's not what happens in residency. You're given patients and you have to like proactively look for things, look for ways to learn. And so it was a bit of a shock for me, I guess. I was like, hey, why isn't all this information given to me? Why aren't there more resources? So I was a bit, you know, a bit bummed when I got there, but nonetheless, I reached out and I found out ways that I can learn. I went to the hospital and I learned with the oral surgery residents. I went to Perio and I learned with them. And I told my program director what my preferences for learning are. Like, I didn't want to do partials. I didn't want to do full mouth reconstructions with crowns. I wanted to do implants. And so actually ended up being a super rich learning process for me because I sought those things out. Now, you asked me how Implant Ninja started. Basically, I was just posting my cases when I was in residency, and there were hardly any dentists posting their cases on Instagram at that point. So I quickly got some following, but I wouldn't say that's really when it was born. Implant Ninja was born when I graduated, and I needed to start paying down my close to $1 million student debt, and I was unable to do so because two things kind of came together that I wasn't expecting. First thing is that I wasn't able to find a good job as a prosthodontist. Apparently, there's not too many job postings for prosthodontists. Um, the second thing was that my daughter was born with a special medical condition, and I wasn't able to actually go to work in a clinic like a regular schedule. I was having to take her to the emergency room like every few days, and so it was really bizarre. I felt like so trapped. I had the debt that I had to pay, and you have to start paying, right? At a certain point, I got an email that says, "Hey, thank you. Your next payment will be due. Your first payment will be due this month." It was like $8,500. So that was tricky. So I had to find a way to pay my debt, and so I wrote the All on X handbook, which ended up just going like super popular, and I was able to make my student debt payment for a couple months with that.
So, you weren't able to find time, find a job, and then find time to give it your all in the clinic because of the issues that you had with the hospitals and the doctors that you had your daughter to visit.
Yeah, so it was basically those two things that I couldn't maintain a normal schedule. It kept getting interrupted with hospital visits, and the second thing, it was hard finding a job. So luckily, though, I didn't like. There were plenty of general dentist jobs available, but I felt like if I would just grab any job just so that I can, pay the bills, it wouldn't be utilizing my skills to the degree that I really wanted to. So I held out and kept looking, and I took one thing that I did was I took out lab managers to lunches. So at one of those lunches over at the Olive Garden, uh, one guy happened to know somebody in Napa who needed help. So he just kind of very discreetly said that she needs help. And so I just drove out there and I met with her, and it was a busy dental implant clinic. And basically, the doctor was going blind, but didn't really tell anybody. And so I started working there and helping her with all her surgeries and fixing mistakes. And so it was a very, very insightful adventure, I'd say. And it also paid the bills because basically when you can help somebody to a really high degree, when there's like a super high need for for your skill set, they pay you more. So I was able to help support my family on like one day working there a week. So that's how I found that. But I think you asked me about the All on X book, right? How I actually like,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah. So the All on X book,
yeah. So how did you find people to buy them? And you said you had a blog that you were posting on.
yeah. So I had a blog that I was posting on, and I put up I put up an ad, basically not an ad. I put up a posting that I was going to I put up a link to pre-sell, right? And so I found 30 when I put it up, I didn't expect anybody to buy it, right? But I read this book, $100 Startup, and they say sell a product before you actually have it, just to test demand. And so I did that, and I found 20 people or 20 to 30 people bought it before I actually had it. And so I just emailed them real quick saying, hey, you know what? I'm putting finishing touches on it. Is it okay if I send you like the updated copy? And so they said it was cool. So I went back and I took all my pictures that I was taking at this busy implant clinic that I was working at, and all my pictures from my residency. And then I contacted like I found like six different people on Instagram that were willing to contribute pictures and articles and all this stuff. And so I wrote most of the book, but then I also served as an editor basically, and I grabbed all the different pieces of value that fill in the blanks on the all next treatment, because it was like super confusing on how
Yeah.
to learn full
Hmm.
arch treatment before that, and so I feel like I was able to simplify it.
So
So yeah, I was lucky to be as many people that support
yeah,
that
and
saw
so
value in it.
and I feel like I see this all the time now. Like as a new dentist, like it's hard to gain respect, especially like as a new dentist within the implant dentistry community. So how did you bridge that gap and get to the point of, okay, well, this book is legitimate and I know what I'm talking about and I know how to simplify it. And how did others perceive that?
That's so interesting. I'd love to hear a little bit more about what you mean, gaining authority or
Like experience. Because at the time of writing the All on X book, you were basically right out of school, right out of
Mhm,
residency. Whereas people were doing this, since the
mhm,
90s. And then you have, people like Dennis Tarnow and, all these famous guys who write these books.
mhm.
And now you're coming out with a book. So did you get any backlash on being like this new simplified book? Or did you only receive support from like all the people that you reached out to?
You know what's super funny? When I was in dental school, I had this teacher. He's like the implant guy at school, and he's one of those guys, gray hair, a lot of publications. And when I went to ask him if I can teach back in dental school, he laughed at me. He's like, "You just graduated. Are you serious? Like, how are you going to teach people?" And he's like, "Oh, by the way, check it out. Here's my book. Here's my new book." And I'm like, "Oh, that's so cool. Have you had many sales?" He's like, "No, not really." Then I'm like, "Here, I want to show you my book." And he's like, "How many have you sold?" I'm like, 1,000. And he's like, "What the hell?" It was like right when the book came out too. And it's really funny to hear to discuss this, I guess, because when I first graduated and I started teaching a specific thing, my friends were like, "Don't you need more gray hair to teach?" And I think it's a very arbitrary thing. I think if you know a certain topic or a certain niche really well and can explain it, I feel like that product speaks for itself. If you're able to really provide the value, if there's not much value, then you have to like sell yourself. You got to be like, yeah, I'm like,
Right.
I can. But if your product has a lot of value, I think that's the trick. That's one key ingredient to making it legitimate. So
Yeah.
I guess there is some self promotion that you should know how to do though, because there's a lot of good products out there that don't get recognized. But really, I just focused on making it a great product and I guess adding value on my Instagram, which was basically my marketing channel.
Right. And so at what point did you decide to start offering courses in addition to the book?
Yeah, so here's where it's kind of funny. I was doing in-person courses, and the most stressful thing for anybody that's doing in-person courses is filling seats, because you have the venue booked, you have like all the stuff that you need to bring there. You have it booked, and you put a link up, and you're like, yeah, everyone said they're going to come to my course. And then like one person signs up. One person is worse than zero people, because if one person signs up means you still got to put that course on for that one person.
Right.
You know what I mean? So
You might as well have people come for free.
you might as well have them come for free. Yeah. So that was stressful. And I did that like 5 times. I put on 5 courses, and my wife's like, you know what? You got to do an online course, because then we don't have to like do this whole game of like setting up and marketing, and then you don't get as many people as you expected. So that's when I basically had my. At that point, I had a dental clinic. So my daughter was a little bit more stable. I started a dental clinic, and I started like more seriously pursuing Implant Ninja. And so I had my clinic and Implant Ninja at the same time that I was running. I was managing both. And my clinic was actually doing surprisingly well, because there's nobody in the area that was doing the all-on-4 treatment. So I was getting a ton of referrals, and my book was doing well, and so both were growing basically at the same, like they both had the same growth trajectory. But my clinic made me more tired and hurt my back, and like clinic doesn't scale. Like clinic that way, it doesn't scale. Some models do scale, but that one did not. So yeah, so my wife's like, just go double down, make this online course. And so that's what I did. I closed my clinic.
Wow.
I basically stopped taking new patients. I took 2 months of clinic time, and I just made this online course.
That's amazing. So let me ask you this now. How do you get the content that you have if you don't have a clinic? Are you still working, or is this primarily like you're filling in spaces within offices and you have your content team?
So in the beginning, I recorded all of my own content, and that really was like, it was really great content. Actually, it was really easy for me to record the shots that I needed to get in order to teach. So I basically was recording all of my own content. As I was doing the procedure, I just have a camera up in the patient's face like this, and so I had to hold my instruments like with with my fingers out of the way. It was really difficult.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's what I was doing, and that was pretty easy, but it was a little bit more time consuming. I can't teach everything, right? I'm not a zygomatic implant expert, and I never will be.
Right.
I'm not going to pretend to be that. I'm never going to be the soft tissue grafting guy or the GBR guy. And so it can't be like Ivan teaches dentistry. I really want to keep the legitimacy that we established, right? So I sought out people who were legitimately recognized in the space as experts. And so we found the guy that teaches zygoma. We found the guy that teaches GBR. So that's how we do that now.
That's so cool. That is really awesome. And I think from your end, it's good to realize that you're not all of those things. And I don't know who said this, but like, I think it's Elon Musk. He says, if you can't do it, find someone who can. Like, does he know how to, put someone on the moon or on Mars? No, but could he find someone who can do it? Probably. And that's what he's doing. So that's really great that's kind of like that's your mentality.
Well, it's about the product too. Like if I teach something that I feel like I'm kind of not confident about, it totally like will mess up our brand, I think. Got to make sure all of the stuff that we're teaching is like top notch.
And I don't know if I asked you this already, but where did you come up with the name for Implant Ninja?
Yeah, so when I was in Michigan and I was at the hospital shadowing and assisting for the oral surgery team, I was like super into it. I thought that after pros, I'm going to go into oral surgery, and I was sort of entertaining that idea. And one of the chief residents, he's like, you know, if you did oral surgery after prosthodontics, you'd be a total implant ninja. And I was like, oh, that's a cool name. So I just
It just
yeah,
stuck.
yeah.
Okay, I just need to get that out of the way. But let's go back to your team. So you said you're recording content. You have this hand. You got to get your hands out of the way. You got to get a good view of whatever you're doing. Who made up your team at that point? And then how has your team transitioned to where you are today?
Yeah, so for a while, kind of like I was saying, for a while I was running my clinic and I was running Implant Ninja at the same time. It was actually for exactly a year. I did both for exactly a year. And at the end of the year, my clinic produced like $400,000 or $500,000 in revenue, which was great. Implant Ninja was on track to be somewhere similar, but Implant Ninja was scalable and my clinic was not. My clinic actually was scaling the other way. I was having to like come in on the weekends. I was having to stay late. I was getting stressed out. People were mad at me. Like there's a lot of patient emergencies, you know, that come with all that. And just the more treatment you take on, the more big treatment you take on, the higher stress level you have. And so that's something that I didn't recognize early on. I thought I was a superhero and I was going to be everybody's savior. I was going to save all my patients, you know. And so I decided to close my clinic at that point and go completely into Implant Ninja. And I was actually going like office to office, still doing some surgery, but I was totally into building Implant Ninja. And so at that point, it was just me and Alvin, who was my assistant. But he's stuck with me like, you know, all this time, 7 years now. And we hired people specifically for Implant Ninja. So well, one exception is the person who was a receptionist. She turned into our like MailChimp marketing person. And yeah, then we hired a videographer. We hired he was also a graphic designer. So we've hired specifically people for the Implant Ninja team. We grew it out to about 8 people. And yeah, that's what our team looks like now.
That's amazing. And so the content that you're posting today is like things that you've done in the past and like things that are part of your course. And the course is already built, so it's self-sustaining.
Yeah, so our courses, we have 13 courses now. And so we post content from all of our courses, which there's like a lot of videos. So, I mean, I don't think I could really run out of content because, you know, we have a lot of videos within those courses. I am posting stuff from my surgeries from before, and I'm also doing like literature review type posts. So that stuff gets the most engagement. Like people want to know that they're doing stuff according to the literature, but they don't want to read literature because it really sucks.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, that's where we get our content. And for a time, I spent all my time managing Implant Ninja, like managing my whole team. But now I recognize that I'm actually not the best person to do so. Actually, Alvin is. So now he's the one that manages everybody. And I'm in a strange place right now where I'm figuring out next steps for Implant Ninja because online education is evolving. When we first came out in 2018, I'd say we were one of the only people. And now everybody's got an online course, right? And it's cool because, you know, online courses are recognized as a legitimate form of education, but it's not exactly creating the future, which I'm really interested in doing. So I want to make sure whatever we create, it's going to be top notch for the next decade. So now I'm kind of focusing on that side of it.
And what do you believe your goals are in regards to that? Like, how are you going to get to the next level? Like, how are you going to scale even more? Because like you hear about all these, like I was talking about before, like all the courses, the live sessions. I don't know if that's something you do now, like live teaching sessions where you go to, people go to Tijuana, Mexico, or different parts of the country, or even abroad to learn how to place implants. Is that something that you feel like you can get into?
Man, I am a very distractible person. So, like, I have 10 ideas a day and I want to pursue all of them. And if somebody says, hey, I want you to do a course in Mexico, I'm going to go to Mexico and do it. But that's why it's important for me actually not to be leading the Implant Ninja team any longer. I am still at the helm of it, but I'm not leading it. So it means I can't just pick a random idea and derail my whole team to do that.
Right.
We set our mission and vision a while back, and it's to create transformative online learning experiences. So it's got to be strictly create figuring out how to create the best online learning experience. And so while yes, I have ventured into doing many live things, they don't really align with our long-term vision.
And
So instead, we're keeping it online and building how do we take the next step and making it better, a better learning experience.
right. No, and it's always good to, especially when you build something from scratch and from the bottom, it's always great to have that original vision in mind, what you originally sought out for, and like what is that? Because a lot of the times different opportunities arise, but if you walk off the beaten path, you kind of get lost in an area, and you're like, all right, well, I got to get back on and continue doing what I was doing.
Yeah,
So
it definitely wastes.
let me
Yeah, go ahead, go ahead.
no I so let me ask you this: what do you think in terms of? I know Alvin takes over a lot of the logistics, right? And your content based literature, the fun stuff.
Mhm.
Where do you see you taking the next steps? In what area? And if you don't want to share, that's completely fine.
That's
But I find, with a lot of companies similar to you, there's a lot of know-how. Like, not any one person can pick up and do what you're doing tomorrow because they don't have the expertise that you have. They don't have, the mindset that you have. They don't have the team that you have.
Mhm. Well, I just want to mention, so I do still stay clinically active. I do have a clinic. I started now that, we're in a more stable situation and Implant Ninja is doing really well. The next step for me does involve me being clinically active. I have to still place implants and I enjoy placing implants. So I started a clinic specifically just for filming implant surgery. So I
Wow.
go in 2 days a month and I just knock out a bunch of implants, and that's basically the purpose of that clinic. But I guess the next step for online education, I think, is well, the first prerequisite is having a really top notch content, but also user experience, right? The user experience has to be very intentional. The second thing I think is forming a community around it. So we have our courses have traditionally been taken in isolation. So like somebody purchases a course and they go through it, they're like, yeah, this is an awesome course. They feel connected to our team because we reach out to them quite a bit, but they don't connect with any other students, right? So I'd say that's a really important part where online learning differentiates from in-person learning. You don't have that same connection with people. So I want
Right.
to incorporate that, and that's something that we just released. It's called Implant Ninja Dojo. So that's an online learning community that tries to tie everything together. So that's, I think, the next level in the next year or two. But longer term than that, uh, I do think that the online education niche will be, I guess, education niche in general will be disrupted to the same degree that it's been disrupted now. So now everything's online education, right? But 5 to 10 years from now, I think a lot of that will change into more virtual reality, augmented reality education. And so
I agree.
that's a very, very big leap. So before I was a surgeon, I grabbed my camera, cool, I can be an educator. Um, Now with this next leap, I can't just grab a camera I have to acquire a whole different skill set to be relevant in the next phase of online education. And so
Right.
that's what I'm trying to do now, so that Implant Ninja can still innovate when things change to virtual reality, augmented reality. I want us to be still able to help students in that space.
That's awesome. It's it's crazy to think that that is what our future looks like. And I, from my end, like I don't even know where to begin to be able to like get into that space. So kudos to you for that. But it's funny to hear you talk about the way that you're kind of running through your business, because with us, we had the same issues as well. You know, helping students get into dental school could feel very isolating, especially during COVID, where you know students used to go to the library and study with people. Now they're at home and they're supposed to study alone for a hard class. So we use Zoom, but we created basically weekly study sessions, coaching hours, and created group chats so that students with similar goals and similar mindsets can interact with each other
Mm-hmm.
on a more personal basis. So it's great how you're doing that with Implant Ninja Dojo, where maybe people can share cases with each other. They don't have to feel like, okay, well, I'm in this alone, because there are a lot of solo practitioners out there that don't have someone they can bounce ideas off of. And especially if they're new into implants, you know, what if they don't have a mentor that maybe you had that could show you the ropes? So that's a really great thing that you're doing.
That's exactly it. Like you can learn in isolation, but really half of your learning is going to come from just connecting with other people who are trying to learn too and maybe are a bit unsure of themselves too, and that's okay. Yeah. Hey, Dan, I for you, how do you get people to show up for office hours? Because in all of our courses, we offer office hours, and like one person shows up, and we have like thousands of students.
Right. Yeah. So that's a difficult thing. I think is your office hours. It's meant for multiple people. I'm assuming based on the way that you said that.
Mm-hmm.
So with our office hours, we put it out there as a resource, right? And also, I as a way to like a COA, like a CYA, like a cover your ass type of thing, because for us, like our job is to get students into dental school, right? Unfortunately, like many dental procedures, like things don't work out the way you want them to all the time. So there are students that don't get into dental school, right? And then they come to us and say, you told us we can get into dental school. Why aren't I getting in? And I look back and I say, well, we have office hours 4 days a week where we have a coach that goes on for 2 hours every night from 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, which is good for Pacific,
Mm-hmm.
Mountain, and Eastern. You didn't go once. Why didn't you go? You know, so that's one reason why I hold it, because we hold our students accountable. So we really do look for motivated students. So a lot of the students that reach out to us, one, they like the one-on-one help. So we tell them, listen, you go to office hours because you can reach out to me and ask a specific question, but I guarantee you, if you go to office hours, people are gonna ask questions that you didn't even know that you had.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and you could just learn from that. Even just sitting in and listening, you're going to be able to learn. So we throw it out in the open like that, because then they kind of think in their head, okay, like maybe I'll learn something,
Mm-hmm.
you know, that I didn't originally go in. Because a lot of people are not proactive. Like whenever they have a question, they ask it, right? Whenever you get sick, you go to the doctor,
Mm-hmm.
right? Whenever your tooth hurts, you go to the dentist.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of people are like that. So if you can get to the point where you can inform your students that, listen, if you're proactive about your studying, or if you're proactive about your learning, you're going to be much better off in the future than if you just come to me when you have a specific question about a specific case. Because the end goal in you learning is going to be way different than if you were, you know, hounding us for your entire time within the course. So we present to those students, and unfortunately, I've learned this the hard way. You can't force anyone to do anything. Similar in the dental chair, you can't force your patient to get a tooth taken out, even though you've informed them that, you know, caries going to the pulp, it's probably going to bother you in the future. It's probably fractured, X, Y, and Z. Can't make them do it. So what we do, and it's what my mother did to me, is repetition. The more you say it, the more it's like, it's with marketing, you know, the same thing with marketing. Like it takes someone 7 times before getting your brand stuck in their head. You got to inform them 7 times before they make you synonymous with whatever they're looking for. So I do the same thing with our students. Like every time someone asks a question in our group chat or community, I say, hey, this is a great topic to discuss in office hours with other students. Maybe we can get their input and bring them into it.
That's a great point. Like I don't highlight it. I'm not like in their face about it. It's just like a little. If you want, go to office hours. But yeah, that's not gonna get anybody in there.
Right.
Yeah,
Exactly.
that makes.
And another thing that we use a lot of the times is we say like, oh, in this office hours we're going to discuss a certain topic.
Okay.
So like it kind of grabs them, and they'll come for that topic, which might be like a 10 or 15-minute conversation, and then you open the floor to questions. And you know, it's I find that a lot of students who do come, it's the same students all over again, and those are the ones that are successful.
Yeah.
So yeah, so it's difficult, but I learned, you know, you can only offer as much as you can, and then ultimately it's whatever the student decides to do at the end of the day. But you can only give the best product with the best resources, and then leave it up to them.
Even in a college class, like nobody goes to office hours, so why am I thinking that online people will take advantage of it?
Right.
Maybe it's not unique to online. Maybe I think you're right. Maybe
Well,
specific or yeah.
the way I look at it too is like different than college classes. Like a course that they're paying for your course. Like if I were paying for your course, I would want to get the most out of it. Right? Similar to how they're paying for our course, like they should want to get the most out of it. What a lot of times their parents help them pay, but it's more it's a little bit better in your end because they're probably paying for their own education. So yeah, I would what I would do and what I try to do is repetition and bring in a topic so that they can come. But do you have any other questions for me? I'm all out on my end.
No, I was just going to say that's one of the challenges with online education. Like course, I guess completion rates. That's something that I've known from the very beginning, that completion rates are going to be an indicator of your success, because I read it somewhere that your let's see, the sale is not completed until the customer gets what they wanted to get. So I shouldn't just be happy that I sold the course. That doesn't matter. I have to sell a course and make sure that they got what they wanted out of it, and that they're happy, that they're a raving fan. So we definitely monitor those like completion metrics, and like we'll like send them swag when they're done. We'll like
That's awesome.
send them an online high five. So that's something that's very very top of mind, getting them to complete their education.
Yeah, and that's something that we also on our end are dealing with, because we have people who complete the course and get into dental school, and they're like the happiest ever. Like we had 2 people recently. One didn't do well on the DAT, and she ended up applying to one school, got in like a week ago. So those are like the most satisfied customers. And like what I'm seeing now after doing this, since 2020, so 3.5 years or about 3 years, like we're having people that are being referred to us. Whereas, and I think the plateau of having like a certain amount of people joining is going to be exceeded soon, because we're finding, especially this year, with people who get in, they're like, oh, we heard about you. Like, we heard that you help students get in. This girl, she got into her top school. And then those are the easiest sales and the most satisfied people, because they know what they're getting themselves into. So I do think now we run a lot of ads on Instagram. I think word of mouth is by far the absolute best. So like if you can give an amazing product to people and have them be good at it, successful with it, and enjoy it, they're going to refer other people to it. And that's why like the biggest companies in the world, they don't even market, because they built this brand awareness. So I think if you could do it in your space with implants, we can do it in our space with pre-dental students. I think that, ultimately you're going to be successful in the end. It takes time.
Well, if yeah, we can definitely swap notes, and I'm sure there's a lot of probably common frustrations along the way. Definitely a lot of like plateaus and like it's not something like we didn't go to school for building an online education system, so there's a lot of figuring things out along the way. So that part could be frustrating, but it's also kind of the fun in it too. So
I know.
best luck with everything you're doing, man. And
Thank you. You too. And I appreciate you hopping on today. I had loved our conversation. I think that we could probably have an entire another conversation just on like the intricacies of like what we're doing within the businesses, how to grow it more,
Mhm.
and then like scaling. I think that could be a great topic for us.
Oh man, wait, scaling. Why do you ask? You guys are trying to scale, I guess.
We're actively trying to scale. I think that it's been a struggle, because we have like great months, and then I think it's pretty seasonal because some students with dental school, it's like June is when it starts.
Mhm.
So we see a lot of people who start contacting us in January, February, March. But
Yeah,
after the application cycle, like September, October, it's pretty quiet because people don't look into the future and say, "Oh, I'll probably need this help in a couple months. Let me start it now so that we can plan everything." People like to do things last minute. So
yeah. So can I just ask you, man, like why scale? Like, I guess what is the goal or the motivation behind that frustration? You know what I mean?
yeah. So well, in terms of scaling, I think that what our mission is to be a quote unquote like one stop shop for students wanting to go to dental school and to become dentists.
Yeah.
So I have a bunch of long term plans that I haven't put out there yet, but we're trying to like my next big goal is to get into the DAT
Mhm.
world and compete with companies like DAT Bootcamp or DAT Booster, but also offer students the application help because I've seen it with my own two eyes and it's all from experience. I think that a lot of the DAT companies and a lot of students think that the DAT is what's going to get you into school. If you do well in the DAT, you get into school. But,
Mhm.
I've seen it multiple times, time and time again, that students do not do that well in the DAT, have a pretty average or below average score, and come to me and they're like, listen, and this is how we started. They're like, listen, I don't want to retake the DAT. I went through that once. I don't want to do it again. So I'm not going to lie, like the first like 2 years of students were really difficult for me because they were all the students. They weren't like your 4.0 DATs, 30 DAT students. They were like your 3 point, the 2.5 to 3.3, and 18, 19, 20 DAT
Mhm.
students.
Mhm.
So I saw with my two eyes that we were able to successfully get them into dental school. So I'm trying to rewrite the narrative on dental school admissions, similar to how you're doing it with implants, in that DET score is important, but it's not the end all be all with getting into school. And I've seen it time and time again with students. So right now we're trying to get into the DET space because unfortunately you can't, poke the beast. And every student wants DAT prep because in their minds they think that's going to get them to dental school.
Mhm.
So we want to get into that space now and scale on that end. So right now what we do is a lot of in person like coaching.
Mhm.
So we want to create a product similar to how you have your course that's completely self guided.
Mhm.
So have a DAT course that people can just purchase online and use and do well, and then they could upgrade to a package where we right now we have a DAT class going on with a tutor, a group session. So
Mhm.
people are going to that twice a week. So they could upgrade to that, and then they could upgrade to the ultimate package, which is the ultimate advising program, which is getting into dental school. So we will help with that. So right now, what we're trying to do is scale on the side of getting students to purchase a product that's self-guided that doesn't involve any manpower or labor on our end.
Hmm. Dude, you sound like me, man. It sounds like you really love being like thinking through all of these business models and how to evolve them and grow them.
Yeah. So it's exciting. It's exciting. At times it gets tough because like you were running a clinic, you were doing Implant Ninja. Like I have my job, I'm 8 to 5 basically, where I have to give it my all. So a lot of this is after hours. I luckily also, similar to you, have an amazing team
Mhm.
of coaches, of support staff that are helping me. Like with this podcast, they'll edit it and make it all pretty so I can post it. They'll post on my account while I'm treating patients, which is great. So you really need a good team around you because it's impossible to do something like this alone.
I'd say one thing that it may or may not apply to you is it can be frustrating wanting to scale for scaling's sake. If you're just trying to grow for growth's sake, it can be very frustrating and disheartening. Um, Sometimes that's happened to me where I'm like, oh wait, why aren't we growing? Like if you don't grow, you're going to become irrelevant or something.
Right.
But a much healthier way to approach it, at least for me, has been how can I how can I deliver a better product? Or how can
Right.
I, yeah, like focusing on that part makes it a creative, fun endeavor. Focusing on the growth part, which is out of my hands, sort a little bit. Um, Focusing on the growth, like why won't more people buy? Like that part can be frustrating and it makes it not
Right.
fun. So
It it
yeah.
it's funny that you say that because I had this whole conversation with my partner a couple weeks ago, and I told him and I was like, listen, I want to create the best product out there. Like, I don't, because we were offering DAT prep before,
Mm-hmm.
but it wasn't like the best DAT prep. We were more like admissions help, and we would help you study for the DAT, but we didn't have tutors or anything. And I said, listen, if we want to create like the best company we can create, we need DAT prep, and it needs to be good, like great.
Mm-hmm.
So 2 weeks later, we hired a DAT tutor who got like a 28 on his DAT. Amazing, really smart kid going to Columbia next year. And he's doing this DAT class. So, and this is like a trial run for me. And it wasn't one of those things where I'm like, oh, I'm going to make money on it. I'm freaking losing money every time he's teaching this class. But it's a proof of concept. Like he's making videos for us to create the self-guided course, and he's doing this DAT class, and it's
Uh-huh.
going to be proof of concept. Are these students who's taking these classes going to do well in the DAT? And I said to him, I said, and he's very thorough and amazing. I said, listen, how amazing would it be if 13 out of the 15 students in this class get above a 20 on the DAT? Then we know what you're doing works. Like we can't sit there and study with them, but like the content that you're putting out and like what you're teaching and the way you're teaching it works. So, and then we'll be able to build it from there, use these videos. And then I told him, and we brought him on. I want him to be a part of it.
Mm-hmm.
So I think creating like what I found is like once you find that person, whether it's like Alvin for you or someone who is just by your side or will do a job great, you got to hold on to them and like try to create that symbiotic relationship so that they have the same mission as you and they have the same goals as you. Because once you find that, you can run.
It's true. It's true, man.
Yeah.
Hey, brother, I got
Well, yeah. So I appreciate you coming on. Amazing conversation. I know we went over a little, but thank you for everything. I think we have a lot in common, and we could talk for hours. So I would love to keep in touch. I think, like I said before, we'll bring you back on. We'll do something else in the future, hopefully with a little better service and situation. But thank you again.
hey, thanks for having me on, dude. And shoot me a text so we can be in touch.
Of course.
Yeah. All right.